Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. I'm calling this meeting to order. This is the Laredo Urban Transportation Study, the Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Committee, and we're meeting here at City Council Chambers at 1110 Houston Street, Laredo, Texas. Today is July the 15th, excuse me, 2019, and it's 1:45 p.m. And a roll call, please, if you wish, or we can announce ourselves if you wish.
Yes, Mayor Pete Saints.
Present.
Webb County Judge Tano E. Tiarina.
Present.
Councilmember Norma Nelly Vielma. Councilmember Dr. Marte Martinez.
Here.
Councilmember Tony Alget. County Commissioner Jesse Gonzalez.
Present.
County Commissioner John Gallo.
Present.
TxDOT District Engineer David M. Salazar Jr.
Present.
For the record, you have quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. Could you also introduce yourselves since you're relatively new, I guess, for the public?
Sure. I'm Kirby Sneidman. I'm the Planning Director for the City of Laredo. I'm also the MPO Director for the Laredo Urban Transportation Study, otherwise known as the Laredo MPO.
And you come from what area?
Well, I'm originally from Southeast Texas. I grew up in a family of 10 kids, big family. I studied out of state.
Pretty normal here in Laredo, but we're good.
Yeah, yeah. I've got some more stories to share about that. I have 6 older sisters, so they taught me a lot. I studied out of state, and I've worked in 6 different states: New York, California, Iowa, Illinois, Texas, Utah. Maybe that's more than 6. I also spent a couple of years in London, England. The bulk of my experience is as a consultant, as a private consultant. I've worked in over 100 cities across the United States and 14 states. And then previously, before this position, I was a city planner in one of the larger cities in Utah. And I'm excited to come back to Texas, and it's great to be back among Texans.
Thank you very much.
Welcome home.
We appreciate it.
Motion to excuse those that are absent.
Second.
Now, there's a motion, a second, discussion, none heard. All those in favor say aye. All those against, none heard. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Yes, moving on to item 3, it's citizen comments. Do we have anyone that signed up? Don't see anyone. And anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. None are approaching the podium, so I guess we'll move on. Item 4, items requiring policy committee action is approval of the minutes of the meeting held. And this is for the minutes May 20th, June 17th, and June 24th, the same year, 2019. Yes, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Gonzalez. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? None heard. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item B, that's Roman numeral 4B. I've received public testimony and initiated a 10-day public review and comment period for the following proposed amendments of 2019-2022 Transportation Improvement Program, otherwise known as the TIP. And there's 2 items there.
So move to receive public testimony, initiate for 10-day public review and comment period.
Okay, so it's a public hearing, so I guess we're opening the public
We're
hearing.
opening it for the next 10 days.
Okay, and seconded.
For both items, for 1 and 2, yes, sir, B1 and 2.
Okay, and seconded by Commissioner Galo. Since it is a public hearing, anyone here present wishing to speak for or against? For or against? For or against? And if not, we have 10 days.
Stays open.
Yeah, so it stays open. So I think that's I don't think we need any further action. Item C, receive public testimony and initiate a 10-day public review and comment period for the following proposed amendments of the 2015-2040 Metropolitan Transportation. That's the
Move to approve public testimony, initiate a 10-day public review and comment period for C1, A, and B, I believe.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion, a second by Dr. Marta Martinez. Again, it's a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against? For or against? For or against? None heard, none approaching. It continues open for the next 10 days.
Chair, I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask a question on B1 on the change of the letting date.
B1?
Yeah. From fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20.
So I would ask Mr. David Salazar.
Sure.
It's
Basically, what we're doing here, we're cleaning up a bookkeeping error, and what we're doing, if y'all can recall, we decided to combine Direct Connector 5 project with the shallow overchange project. So we combined them into one date, and we moved one forward and one backwards. Direct Connector went from fiscal 19 to fiscal year 20, and shallow interchange went from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 20.
Very well. Thank you.
Okay, this is the direct, connector is the one heading west and coming south to Laredo?
Direct Connector 5 is headed west on Loop 20, headed south toward 35.
Right, okay.
And then the shallow is overpass over the railroad.
Okay. And that should be beginning construction, you're saying 2020 then?
We have it for letting in fiscal year 20, which we have it programmed for December of 2019.
Okay. Okay, so we're in D now. I received public testimony and initiate a,
We're in 19, right?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, so we're in December of this year. Okay.
Yeah. Receive public testimony, initiate a 20-day public review and comment period for the draft 2020 Unified Planning Work Program, which is the UPWP. And it's got various items with amounts for a total of $900,000. Again, is there a motion?
So moved to receive public testimony, initiate a 20-day public review and comment period
Second.
for the UPWP.
There's a motion, a second, seconded by Commissioner Gonzalez, and it's a 20-day instead of the 10-day. And again, public hearing, anyone wishing to speak for or against? For or against this item? For or against? Not heard, and no one approaching, then it'll remain open for the next 20 days. Item E, a discussion with possible action on the River Road project. And I see Mr. Medina. Do you care to say a few words? You've been kind of following this and kind of spearheading.
I can if you like me to.
Sure, yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah, I think my understanding is that Mr. Mueller, Albert Mueller Senior, is wanting now to visit with some of us, me in particular, and you, and I've been open, whatever day you want to schedule that. I know I've been traveling the last, well, as a matter of fact, I'll be traveling this Wednesday to Washington. I bet, but we'll find a date.
The only conversation that I had was several with Mr. Mueller, and he said he wants to be on board for the Riverbank Road. I think he now understands the need,
Right.
but
For the record, would you
I'm sorry, my
state your
name is
name?
Jose R. Medina. I'm a landowner next to La Bota, and it ends up almost near the Pico Road. And I've been trying to, as you know, with the city for quite some time, move it on the Riverbank Road, because we know it's a necessity for passenger vehicles only. Otherwise, the Mines Road is going to continue to be an industrial site area. And
Okay, so it's really, a river that kind of parallels the river.
it's
It's a road that parallels the
Back
river,
end
but it
of,
also
La
parallels
Bota?
Pines Road.
yes, back into La Bota, and it goes through the back, basically.
Excuse me.
There you go. I believe I can bring another presentation in the future, but
Could you point out Mines Road so the public can get an idea?
yes, the Mines Road's gonna be right here, right in that area.
Okay,
And the river's gonna be right here at the bottom, and the Riverbank Road will be pretty much in between the two, and
Where's Pico Road?
Pico Road's gonna be.
Further west.
This is, by the way, this orange is the city utilities, the water plant. Pico Road would be right about here somewhere. And our property is that pink line, all of that would be our property, and this green area would be La Bota. Everybody, all the way from UISD property, now across all the way to Pico Road, it's online to donate land, so they can start considering the Riverbank Road,
okay.
okay?
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Kirby, I think if you're not familiar, I would ask that you get familiar with this, because I think that's going to be one of the projects that I think council and this commission will probably be moving.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from the commissioners here on the, here with us? And if not, discussion with possible action on the Chad Ruthinger. And I see Mr. Our county engineer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Luis Perez Garcia, Webb County Engineer. we have made some considerable movement on the project milestones since we've last discussed this. We have met with the City of Laredo officials and discussed the unification process of providing a unified document to TxDOT between Webb County and the City of Laredo for the construction of the entire road section. We've also held a public meeting as requested at your Faskin Community Center. That was held last week. We met with various members of the public, including officials from the school districts and various other groups that have an interest in this area. We have compiled the comments that were made. There was a comment box that was prepared and was stuffed with some comments from various different entities. We are compiling the comments that were made and discussing them with a consultant engineering firm. We're moving forward with that process, in the objective being completing the environmental document. The environmental consultant has been on site and has finished all of their required site visits, and they're working with the paperwork required to submit the document.
Okay, again, any projected deadlines or?
The deadlines
dates?
have been what they are. We are hoping to have a document submitted by December. And what we were hoping to do is move forward and shorten the response time for the document. I think we've been
And the
successful.
document would be the environmental phase?
The environmental phase, yes, sir.
Right. And then the planning phase would be a few more months beyond that?
That is correct.
Right. And then construction? so we can-
Construction we're talking about breaking ground. David, if you could chime in a little bit on the anticipated construction and the timeframe going forward from the environmental document?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I'm gonna refer this to Roberto Rodriguez, who's got a little bit more hands-on
Yeah,
knowledge of this
Roberto Rodriguez
situation.
would text that. Just for the portion of a chart, we have it scheduled for fiscal year 2021. And then we'll be saving the category 7 funding until 2024 for the Ruth Injury portion.
For, what was this for?
Fiscal year 2021 for a chart and 2024 for Ruth.
But for what?
For construction.
Construction.
I thought the construction was already a SIP loan from the city. Did that change?
No, it's funded, but the actual construction in the beginning,
They're gonna put that money on hold.
tractor work.
That's what you're saying. You're gonna put the money on hold, is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, we get about $6.8 million every year of category 7, so we have to be banking it until we have enough money.
So you're
For the
encumbering the
first-
6.8 million.
Correct, the first portion, and it will be 2021, when we have enough money for a chart, and then we have to save money for another couple of years.
As long as it's making interest somewhere, we're okay.
No, wait, I'm confused. I thought that the city had a SIP loan for a chart.
No, I think it,
Now we're going all TxDOT monies?
yeah, but it came through this board here
Yeah, but I thought,
sometime back.
at one time it was fully funded through SIP
It
loan.
it was, and then, and that was about 2 years ago,
Yeah.
2-3 years ago.
Yeah, right now, it's currently all Cat 7 funding, Commissioner
Huh?
Gayla.
Sure.
Right now- As of now, it's all Category 7.
Yeah, you missed that in 3 years.
I've been in a fog. And I also thought we were in environmental for like 3 years, and so.
Well, that's true too.
Well, we were there
We're
4
moving
years, but the
forward.
last 3 years we've been okay.
We're moving forward, and these are some pretty substantial milestones that we've accomplished in the last period, and we intend to continue at the same pace to get to the document unification by December.
So do we have, are the construction estimates current now, since we've added, I don't know how many years to the project? It's usually what, 5% a year goes up?
It depends, but I think from the latest estimates that we have, we programmed it out, so when we have the money there, we're gonna have enough construction dollars for it.
Okay,
That's all I have, sir.
okay.
Any questions?
Yeah, any other questions?
Well, I hate to keep asking, but so has the project changed then in scope? Is it gonna be a divided highway with frontage lanes, or is it just gonna be the frontage lanes, or
think
just
it's five
divided
lanes,
highway,
no?
or?
Two and then one in the middle?
It's 4 lanes. The discussion that we were having at the public meeting process was whether it would be an intersection at grade when it comes to 35, or if they were talking about going over 35 and then connecting north and south. We still haven't got to that point.
if I may, Mayor.
But that was, initially, there was supposed to be, TxDOT supposed to be doing, it was gonna be
Overpass.
$23 million overpass.
It hasn't been funded, but I think it's being planned, is that it?
No, I
It
think
was $100
currently,
million.
currently what
No,
the
it
judge is
wasn't.
talking is, we do have an I-35 corridor, project that we're looking at from Shiloh interchange all the way up north to milepost 28. A lot of those projects are not funded. We do have designers on board right now, currently designing that. The ones that are funded right now is the Uniro, which is of a bigger priority right now.
Right.
There is a plan up ahead, and the discussions that I believe we had with the county and the city was that once the right-of-way was acquired for 35, there was gonna be enough frontage road there, so neatly we can move forward with an overpass. It is not funded. We do not have funds for an overpass at this point. We are certainly looking at that situation if the right-of-way can be donated at a width of 400 feet, I think that's what it was.
400 feet is what's
I
required.
think the Ruthinger family is willing to donate.
The Ruthinger
Both sides.
family and the
Both
Achar
sides,
group are unified in this. We have received a comment from North Web Development regarding their donation, and there's some issues that need to get negotiated before they go forward with their donation.
You are wanting that overpass. You already have-
Yeah, we do. We need that overpass.
So-
And it's something that we're trying to figure out as well as we go through the planning stages. Because we do have some issues on the opposite side as well that we're trying to work out.
That is correct, Dr. Martinez, and currently we do have development authority, which allows us to jump ahead and start designing some of these projects. It is our intent and that from Union back and north, that at every mile and a half, we would have an overpass. Unfortunately, they're not funded, but that's what our plan is, our long-term range plan for that.
Long term.
Yeah, so that, it would help us out tremendously if we could acquire that right away now.
So long time meeting, you and I are going.
Okay, yeah,
Again,
Doctor, did
so-
you have?
That was it.
Oh, okay.
So, going back to the actual road design now, so what is it? Because before it was a
Yeah, I think it was.
4 lanes plus frontage. So now,
Yes, I'm sorry, it's 4 lanes and the associated frontage roads, east and west.
so, are we building it all, or what are we building, frontage, or are we building the interstate?
My impression is that we're building the 2 lanes first, and that's going to be an extra heavy, weight corridor. And
Which
then
2
the
lanes?
access roads would come subsequent to that.
I think it's something that I think
The center
we probably
lanes.
need to revisit here sometime soon and start looking at it, make sure our numbers pair up. Let me get with Roberto and staff, and maybe we can visit with you and start looking at the scope of those
The
projects.
discussion initially was that the heavyweight corridor would, if they went with the access roads first, there may be some rapid deterioration due to some of the heavyweights. The discussion has always been that the heavyweight corridor would be constructed first, so that we don't get that deterioration on the under-designed, if you want to call it that, roadway.
Well, I mean, it's been a while since I've been in discussion, but the discussions at the time were the frontage roads were really the ones that have to be super constructed, because that's where all your turning's going on, and that's where all the entrances to all your things.
It's probably
Where
not-
on your your center lanes, it's straight traffic. So you don't have the turning and twisting and, what really tears up the road.
It's probably be a good idea to sit down, everybody involved, and go over some of the strategies involved, because it's being explained to me in one manner, and maybe that's not what you guys.
And if
are
that's the
hearing.
case, could we bring it in 60 days, you think?
I think
Or-
a workshop might be in line.
So how you gonna
that
turn
these
off the
questions
center
get
lanes?
answered. And we'll coordinate with our
Those questions.
consultant and probably have
We'll
them
go
here
for it
next
first.
meeting to discuss some of these questions that so the consultant still has the environmental task at hand, but the ultimate scheme of how the heavyweight and the various different access roads are designed, they'll also be privy to that, so we can answer some of these
Hey,
questions.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I think, I know there's a cost involved here that we have to be cognizant of, but this whole road is gonna be accessed by semis the whole time. And so whether you start with the outside turning lanes or you start with the central corridor, they all have to be beefed up to a certain extent.
They all
because
have to be
that
beefed
is
up, no
going to
doubt.
be utilized more than anything by 18-wheelers. And so I think we gotta look at this and say, okay, what comes first, what comes second? That's not really of consequence here. What's of consequence is that we're building it the correct way, all the way through, because whether you're turning or whether there's bumps, this road will get destroyed quickly by the weight. I mean, that's what it's intended for. And so through from a design perspective, we have to make sure that it's designed
from the grade all the way to the base layer to everything, to be able to handle the amount of traffic, the amount of weight. And I think that's the whole purpose of this
The
road.
whole purpose is, I
And
believe,
that li-
during our discussion we were having the other day, the only extra heavy corridor is currently, I believe, in Hidalgo. And the city of Laredo wants some of that revenue because they pay extra to traverse the roadways. The city of Laredo is very interested in not turning down any business because we can't handle the heavy
And then
loads.
that light too, keep in mind that this traffic is generated at the bridges,
Correct.
Columbia and the World Trade Bridge.
Yeah, who charges though?
So,
Are we gonna charge you this, on this road?
We're charging too?
Yes.
what's that?
On this road?
No, the city is, it will eventually, but then again, not this road, but this road will connect to the bridges, so somewhere, somehow, we need to also protect those.
Of course,
The MPO is gonna be charging, no, not the city.
Well, anyway, we'll
If MPO money's building it now, right?
have that battle
Next dot's gonna charge.
when it comes.
I'll get with everyone on this committee and discuss any questions, and I'll have the consultant be prepared to answer those questions at our next discussion.
Wonderful, thank you. Maybe we can plan, Mr. Salazar, do you think within 60 days we should have it now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that should be plenty of time.
Thank you. Do you mind making that notation, Mr. Kerr?
Do we need a workshop for this?
In 60 days, we'll bring it back to see,
Were you
Just about the
recommending,
construction.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go.
Forgive me, sir.
Depending on the questions and how many questions there is, maybe a workshop is in line, but I'm intending to have those answers to those questions available to you as early as our next meeting.
Commissioner Gaylor, is that adequate? Just bring it back to you with all the answers?
That'd be lovely.
How long have we been working on this?
how long have you been a judge?
I've been here 7 years and we've been working on it 7 years.
Going on my 5th year and we're still talking about
I've
this.
been here for a lot longer than that, and this has been on the
It's actually
session for
pretty
about
embarrassing, to be
15
honest with
years.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, for us to be even asking these questions, I mean, we should already have all the scope completed and done.
Let me give you a little bit more explanation. Initially, this road came in as the Achar Parkway Road. The Ruthinger section is relatively new, and it changed the entire design scheme.
Yeah, keep in mind, we had a huge, interruption there, and the FBI was very much part of that, so keep that in mind too.
But it didn't stop the environmental, it didn't stop. I mean, we had to go back and, I know we went through trials and tribulations of the county, and like, we had to go back and relet it 3 times for the environmental, to make sure we were in line with all the guidelines and everything.
But weren't some of those people involved too, and, they were involved in all this? Anyway, that's the.
They're still involved. They're involved to this day.
We're involved to this day, that certain
so-
things have changed, yes. The Ruthinger section coming on really created the opportunity to do a lot more than initially was planned, which would go through the industrial parks at Unitech and the HR Industrial Park. The Ruthinger section added considerably to the project and has made it a much more viable project. We're not going to a terminus, we're going, continue moving.
Well, it was always it always considered the Ruthinger, just that once they were made aware and were willing, to come on board, which they did right away,
Yes.
I just, the scope has changed over the years, and like I say, we talked about doing the frontage roads, doing concrete frontage roads, because that's where you're gonna have,
Your load would.
you have another 10, 50, 100 acre, industrial lots, and, so I just don't see how you're gonna build the center roads and have these trucks stopping on the center road and turning, so.
We'll get all those answers to you. We'll get your questions first and then get your answers for the next meeting.
Okay, moving on to reports and presentations, that's Roman numeral 5. B, presentation by Stephen Guillaume, AICP with AECOM on the Fort Worth to Laredo high-speed rail study.
I believe the first presentation is
Been there.
from CDM Smith.
We've been there.
I'm sorry?
First presentation will be by CDM Smith.
Oh, okay, that's fine, oh, okay.
Give me one second. Bring the screen up.
Remember that was a question.
So your name for the record, please, when you're ready.
Yeah.
They're probably the
It's
same
good.
presentation.
Chart Ruth and you're all two. Are we gonna have the new 300-mile-an-hour train?
And that's the next presentation.
That's the next presentation. They get the fun stuff.
No,
I,
this-
I get the boring federal regulations. How about that?
Well, it's,
So,
wait.
yeah, are you guys ready?
We don't have this on the agenda.
I don't see A on here, so it has to be.
There's, I have no A on my agenda.
Yeah, I thought it was,
Oh, it's correct on my page.
Yeah.
So was it posted correctly? That's all that matters.
Report, it's under, just under reports and presentations or what?
Yes, and
Oh.
on the other sheet from the tab.
Okay, but it's just under, okay.
but it was
It
posted?
doesn't say A.
Yeah.
It was B.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
I don't know where
For some reason, we didn't, yeah,
We're
mine
good, we're
doesn't. Okay. Yes, your name, please? After that.
My name is Jennifer Palmer. I'm with CDM Smith. And we're doing the update to the 2020 through 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So that's the long-range transportation plan for the region. And I'm just here to kind of give you an update on and an overview of what an MTP is. So you guys have kind of a background knowledge on what we've been doing, why we do it, and some of the work that we've been doing to date. As well as some of the work that's in progress right now that you'll see as things move forward, that we come back to you and have, and have some more definitive project prioritization criteria and things like that to go through. So that's pretty much my overview for today. We'll go through what an MTP is if you're not as familiar with it, key components of that process, the role of the policy committee as well as the technical advisory committee, which we met with this morning as well. Relevant federal requirements that we have to meet for this plan so that you can maintain funding. And then just a little bit of overview of our schedule and our next steps. So what is an MTP? An MTP is a 25-year horizon plan. It gets updated every 5 years. It's a federal requirement for the MPO receiving their federal monies for federally funded projects. It's required under law and funded. It's prepared by the MPO and it's adopted by the policy committee. We work with a whole wide array of stakeholders and the public in developing these plans. This 2045 update is a minor update, is what they call it. So every 10 years, you do a major overhaul and major update, but the minor update is supposed to be reviewing the progress that's been made since the last MTP was updated, and also make sure that you're adhering to any new federal laws and regulations. So there's two kind of key components to the MTP process. One is technical, and the other is a public process. So the technical analysis includes things like travel demand modeling, which we do in concert with TxDOT, identifying a whole array of needs that we need for all different modes of transportation in the region, and then ultimately identifying a list of long-range projects in a 25-year span. So it's a really big picture as opposed to your TIP that's looking at your 5-year immediate plan. In terms of the public process, we go through a whole lot in order to obtain public input. We held in the fall, we held some kickoff public meetings. We held 2 of those. We also conducted some focus group meetings on specific subjects with agency representatives and other agency members to get their opinions on things like freight, on multimodal transportation and bicycle pedestrian access, on ITS improvements and things that would help the region move forward in a variety of different ways in terms of transportation. And we gather all of that to come up with some goals and objectives that are going to guide the decision making and how we ultimately prioritize projects in the region to meet those things. The technical review committee is super important in this in terms of providing technical oversight The MPO is actively involved in that, as well as a whole array of members of different agencies within the Laredo region, so that we get a diverse number of perspectives. But also they help before we come back to you as the policy committee in guiding the goals and objectives of the plan, and making sure that we have an accurate and complete list of potential projects over the 25-year span, both funded and unfunded. It's really to get a whole sense of the needs. And in making sure that we're developing some performance measures so that we can see in the next 5 years and in an annual kind of basis how the MPO is doing at achieving those goals and objectives. As we do that with the technical advisory committee to get recommendations and to confirm some of the things that we get through all this outreach, then we come back to you as the policy committee so that you can confirm that those recommendations are accurate. The goals and objectives are in line with what you know to be those of the region for our long-range planning process. Also in terms of making sure that that project list that we have over the 25-year span includes everything that we need to look at and score, to get your input and make sure that you agree with the recommendations from the Technical Advisory Committee and our technical analysis on the scoring criteria and rankings of those projects. And then ultimately informally adopting that plan. So, as I mentioned before, a good part of this MTP process has a lot of federal regulations and requirements to it. And since the last MTP was developed, the FAST Act was adopted on the federal side for a federal transportation law, and there came with that a number of new provisions that we need to make sure are updated in this MTP. So this slide just kind of shows the 10 planning factors that you need to make sure are considered in your MTP process, and they range from, as you can see, economic vitality to travel and tourism. Resiliency and reliability is a new one that was added on, and really focusing in on system preservation, on the operation and management of your infrastructure. So we need to make sure that we're in this MTP showing that we're meeting all of these 10 planning factors when we're developing goals and objectives for the region.
Yeah, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, from a more practical standpoint, at what point within this 25-year period do we start focusing on right-of-ways? Because, really, aligning certain road projects, whatever, because that's usually, my experience has been that, we wait so long, costs go up, improvements are actually done within those perceived right-of-ways. So the sooner we can identify those corridors, I think, would save us a lot of time, money. These projects, we're talking 25 years from now. But the sooner we can, have an idea more or less what area it'll cover, at least apprise some of the landowners, the planners, that sort of thing, so we can start, planning, before it gets, overly developed then.
Sure, and that's really the purpose as we get into a long-range transportation plan, is trying to be a little bit more proactive in those things. So as projects are identified, and they really get identified by you, by the public, by our coordination with TxDOT, and the initiatives that they have going on, as well as full coordination with all the different transportation agencies in the region. And we come up with this list of projects, but we can also come up with some assumptions about from historic data on what that right-of-way increase in cost is, so that you're able over the course of time to see, okay, well, if we wait on this project until X year, it's going to cost us this much more money because right-of-way has gone up or things like that. It has those assumptions in there. And there's a lot more focus on this federal planning end now on performance metrics. And those are really going to help you in looking on an annual basis with TxDOT and others at how well you're performing against some actual quantifiable performance data. And some of those could be these cost factors that you mentioned too. So this performance-based approach, without going into all of the weeds and details with it, the idea, I'll show the pretty picture of it, is this. You decide where you want to go in a big picture sense from your goals and objectives, and from that you develop some performance measures. How are we going to know if we're successful in doing that? And then you also establish some performance targets of what do we want to be? If we have this vision, what does it look like when we get there? Then we go through some technical analysis and our programming on what available funding is there. And we create a system that actually has a continual ability to implement projects
Yeah, I
and
think
then
there's a
evaluate
question
them.
if
Yeah.
you
I'm
can hold
sorry.
your thought.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I see this process, but when does this process start? I mean, obviously, we're in the middle of it to a certain extent. I mean,
Yep.
When do we have to define these objectives and these goals? How quickly?
So the goals and objectives we've taken from the public involvement, the previous MTP update, the focus group meetings that we've held, and we have some draft goals and objectives that I can share with you as well. We're going through those with the technical advisory committee now, and then when we bring those to you for formal adoption, you know, you'll have the stuff ahead of time to take a look at and make sure that you're in agreement with it, but it'll
How
come
would-
from the
How would we
recommendation.
add things to this? I mean, where's the process where we can actually implement?
Maybe
some
what I,
changes?
if you will, Doctor, you know, I just made a comment to the judge, maybe Mr. Kirby and Rhonda Tiffin being the planners, you know, Rhonda being the planner for the county and you for the city, can apprise, can start developing, concepts or whatever as to how you foresee, our city in the next, say 10, 15, 20 years,
We're
25 years.
definitely very involved in this process, and
I'm sorry, I missed that first line. Yeah, you said,
He's very involved.
oh, okay.
yes, we're
great.
very involved in this process. And to answer your question you had, we are going to, well, we're not constrained, but we're given some goals that come from the federal government already, and she shared those. Now, we can add to those goals, and we definitely are going to. And where are we getting those goals? Well, mostly that's coming from Viva Laredo plan, and some of the things that were already, we had a great amount of participation, and what citizens said they want. We're gonna incorporate that in. So we're gonna be working that down, and then we're gonna bring that to you to then say, is this a good reflection of the goals?
The Viva Laredo plan helps with design of roads, but not necessarily with where we want the roads to end up, right? And so I think I think the long-range thoroughfare plan is the appropriate place to look for that. And I think council just moved to actually get the long-range thoroughfare plan updated ASAP. And so that's why it's so important, because if we're making goals for federal funding, we need to have an incorporated plan through the city of Laredo so that those goals align. If not, then we can make any plans we want to, and we're not going to be able to incorporate them into some of these larger scale plans that we're doing. And so it's very important that we get this done, which is why I was asking about the process when we can get this in. Can we bring some new ideas? Are there some new roads? There's a lot of new development that's occurring on the north side, a lot of new developments occurring on the south side, a lot of development in Webb County. And so things have changed from the last 5 years to now
Sure.
significantly. And I think the goals of the city and the goals of the county, I think, have changed over the last 5 years. And so, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here for the county, but there are some changes. And so having this plan through the city and hopefully through Webb County updated so that we know where these roads are gonna be, how they're gonna be built, and why we're doing it, then we can incorporate it into this. So I don't wanna turn this in until we have basically updated our plans as well on the city side.
Sure.
That's my, I guess, my.
And also too, from the standpoint of a timeline for us, what's limiting to us, obviously is sewer and water development and the extension of those lines, and the money that we have in place, so all of that kind of kicks in and okay, but you're the expert in that, so, you guide us, and Mr. Kirby, and of course, Rhonda Tiff.
As my role as MPO director, I will be very involved in that, and we're gonna be adding, I don't know, we didn't talk much about it, but with the Unified Work Plan, I'm proposing to use the money that we are getting from TxDOT to actually have staff on board. So we have a GIS planner, we have a transportation planner, we'll have a active transportation planner, and we'll have additional admin to actually have a group like most MPOs do, where we can start really diving down and owning the data, owning the
TxDOT
plans.
does give
understand-
money and funding for those particular
They do. We
positions.
haven't been using
We just
it.
haven't been using it
No,
for that.
we've had an approach of mostly hiring consultants, and a lot of times that information comes in and leaves with them.
And I would
We'll be
state
taking a
also that
different
you need to
approach.
stay very closely, close to Rhonda Tiffin or the planner, because, obviously we're integrated, we need to see what they're thinking, so it won't.
That's a great point, and we
Yeah.
will. We're going to work closely with our partners, with TxDOT, with the county, and move forward in that. You asked a question specifically, Dr. Martinez, about the goals. So this is two parts. The goals are somewhat separate from the actual planning for the roads, which she's also going to get to. And that's a process too that we're going to we'll have a list of possible projects that could receive funding from monies that would come through this, so.
Yeah, and a simplified version of it,
Yeah.
keep in mind, we have 83, we have 359, 59, and then 35, and the Mines Road, and all the others over here. Obviously, we need corridors connecting to those some way, somehow, because those are the access points to our city and the expansion of proposed development in the future. But, some way, somehow, that's all of that has to be prioritized and see what areas need to come first. And then develop accordingly. I would think, in a very simplified mind, yeah, sorry. Okay.
Well, as we mentioned before, the goals and objectives are really the starting place, and it sounds like you guys have been talking a whole lot on the project end, which is the end result of where we're going to get to. Just to touch really high level on some of the public involvement that we've done to date. As I mentioned, we did 2 public meetings in the fall. We also have conducted some focus group meetings with different representatives within the community. We conducted some surveys of the public, and all of those things combined with the previous MTP, the Viva Laredo plan, and all of those things kind of helped to draft some goals and objectives. And we're going to be going through those with the technical committee in short order and with the MPO actively involved in that. Some of the things, just to give you kind of a flavor and highlight of the things that we heard from the public, they're obviously, as with many places, frustrated with traffic congestion. We heard a lot about balancing the freight traffic with quality of life concerns. So, safety incidents end up becoming forefront of a lot of the comments that we received, interactions with communities and freight traffic. Investing in more transportation options.
Excuse me, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. May I?
Yes, sir.
Was there a solution for that?
These are just the common themes that we heard from the public. As you start to develop these goals and objectives, they should be surrounded, they should really be built on the things that you hear. And then you start developing, once you have these goals, well, we want something that actually balances these things. Now, what are our objectives to get there? And then what are the projects that are actually going to get us there? And how are we going to measure it once we've gotten there to know that we were successful? So we're kind of, with these goals, really establishing a big picture framework. So I'm just kind of going over, these are some of the things that we heard. No one gives solutions to these problems. Obviously, you guys know this when we solicit feedback from members of the public. We hear a lot of what their frustrations are and things like that, but we don't necessarily hear these solutions. However, they do help us to formulate what our goals should be. Our goals should be to tackle these problems that we're hearing time and time again.
Well, that's a good question. So to my point, just from my knowledge then, forget about the public, from my knowledge, how would you do that? You just do a 1 lane for commercial traffic and the rest for, how would that work?
I think there's a variety of strategies that need to be undertaken from a regional perspective if you're trying to balance those things. I think that some of it has to do with land use decisions. So if you have heavy freight corridors, we were talking about this thoroughfare plan that get identified as being kind of the connectors for that, then you want to make sure that your land uses are appropriate for that. And also at the same time, that you're concentrating some of the development where it needs to be for multimodal options, bike ped options, things like that.
And forgive me if my question seems so silly, but I was just thinking exactly to the point of a Char Ruthinger. I mean, if we're gonna have a lot of commercial traffic, which is generally gonna be the majority is gonna be commercial traffic, how would we do that now? I mean, I know we're talking about 25 years down the road of, you know, but right now, we have a project that's gonna go underway here before long. And if that's the situation, it's still, you know, people are still gonna be on that you know, on having those kind of problems. So I was just trying to figure out how we could avoid those kind of,
Yeah, and I mean, as we go through and, you know, and confirming these goals and objectives and really identifying the projects and looking at the projects that are already out there, we might consider more multimodal solutions, and then I'll let you speak to
It might be helpful to, you know, actually, Tano, you made a comment in last meeting. I watched that, the whole meeting. You made a really good comment, and that was that y'all, well, except
I
for.
get one a year every now and then.
It was very good, except for one of y'all aren't traffic engineers. This is not, you know, you aren't trained in this field to do that. And that's understandable. We don't want transportation engineers to make all of our decisions. The whole point of the MPO is to have local planning and local oversight when federal and state dollars are spent. So you're doing your job by coming in here and not being a professional transportation planner. So it's okay to ask questions, be curious, but you do need a certain amount of knowledge. And so you asked, isn't there some time we could get some training to, you know, kind of not have to, maybe the learning curve isn't so long, or maybe we can be reminded of some things. So I'll talk about that at the end, about a possibility to do some of that either individually as a group. But the point is, you want to be able to have that information so that you can make the right decisions. And as a city, we're making transportation decisions. We have a traffic department, we have a planning department, we have an engineering department. We make those. The MTP, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan for funding, is about, the federal government is putting dollars, TxDOT dollars into our hands, and what are the strings attached? And that's what they want to make sure that that money is not just spent in a way that's irresponsible. So the point of this plan is to make sure our goals are aligned with theirs, and we're spending their money on projects that they would agree with the priorities that they've set. So this is not the opportunity to figure out all of our transportation plans for the future. That's what we have the general plan for. That's what we have our thoroughfare plan that we're going to be updating. So,
And the future use.
so this is not going to cover the whole question of how transportation occurs in the city and the region. This is specifically about where money's going to come in and could be spent. Two things. One, what are the goals of why are we spending this money? And number two, we'll actually develop a project list of potential projects where monies could be spent. She's going to get there. She hasn't got there yet. And that's where it gets a little more specific on actual road lengths and, you know, adding additional lanes or working on intersections or road improvements or bicycle lanes, pedestrian improvements, all this. We're going to have an actual list of projects that we can review, and that will get more detailed. Did that context help?
Mr. Snyderman, just one
Yes.
thing. It's Judge Tijerina.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Judge.
That's okay.
I think if I may, and I hate to take from your thunder because you're doing a great job, I'm actually learning something, and I'm not sure I'm a traffic engineer either, but we'll call it that. I think basically the 25 NTP that we're working on is something that we're working through right now. If you narrowed it down to the 4-year tip, it's projects that will come together with local officials to program out what's best for the city and the community. As TxDOT, we're always working forward to that. One of the main things we did this morning was we changed that project because we're in agreement that we're gonna change the MTP. So we're kind of working with you now, some of these long-term plans, the outer loop, there's certain situations on Mines Road, certain situations on 35. That's part of the MTP that we're talking about right now, Judge. It can get narrowed down to more specific, the 4-year tip, which those are actually funded, and those are gonna go. But working through this plan like this, the lady's explaining to us, is we program for the future. You know, the outer loops and stuff, we start planning, we start trying to get to that process, which is something that we're doing. And because of the MPO established within the city, TxDOT cannot come and literally force something down and say, hey, this is what we're gonna do. Because that's why we're here today. We're gonna work together. The federal dollars that we're getting, the CAT 7s, CAT 11s, the 1s and 4s, either with the city limit, either with the range of the MPO, we're gonna come to you and say, hey, this is what we're planning on doing.
But we need some sort of objective measures, right? Because, I mean, how do you gauge frustration? I mean, how do you measure frustration? I mean, do you just comments? I mean,
So one of the, so, you know, as I think it's been mentioned a few times now,
Bullets.
there's a lot of federal requirements that go into this MTP. And as you mentioned, you know, this is a continuous process, so you guys continue to make updates to the MTP over time. It's a living document. It's not like it gets done and we're done and I'll see you in 5 years. But one of the changes that we do have to update as part of this plan, based on the new federal requirements, is a focus on performance-based planning. And yeah, I had a couple graphs and things like that to show, but the bottom line is that once we have these goals and objectives solidified, we come up with actual performance measures. At the very beginning of the year, you guys actually adopted some TxDOT performance measures and targets. And those are two different things. The measures are the general ways in which we're going to look at things. So from safety to travel time reliability, and there are quantifiable measures that we look at for each of these things. And then TxDOT has established at a statewide level reductions that they would like to see in crash rates, for instance, and what their targets are in the next 5 years for doing a lot of these things. So those performance metrics have been established and adopted by the policy committee so far. So those will be incorporated into the plan. The question becomes, and as we do more coordination with the MPO over the next couple of months, is what additional performance measures are needed and metrics do we want to be judging ourselves by in the future to be able to say similarly, you know, maybe some of these TxDOT measures measure everything that we need to know about the system, right? But chances are that some of these things, the frustration, the more qualitative things that have to do with, you know, quality of life issues and stuff like that, we have to figure out what the performance targets are going to be and the performance metrics are going to be that we look at. So that's part of this process too. And then you have a document that's not just, you know, and here we are and we're done, but it really is a living document and it gives you a mechanism and what will be part of this federal requirement from here on out, and TxDOT will be,
so
you
it's
know,
not
helping
just
with
done every
this.
5 years. As we go through the process, we can update this document as we go.
Oh, yeah.
We can't, and
Yeah.
the short answer to your question is, yes, you're right, Dr. Martinez, we should be using data and clear objectives, and we will be, not just in this process, but everything we do at the MPO, we'll be gathering and collecting more data.
But don't we have this ongoing document now? You know,
We do,
Okay.
and we're just updating, so we're not writing it.
What is the quote unquote, I know it's a living document, but what would be the deadline to have this update occur
This official minor update is by the end of the calendar year.
by the end of the calendar year? Okay.
And we
Or
have,
we can update it next year as well.
We just did it two years ago, I believe. Two years
We
ago.
did an update to it.
I believe so.
Yes.
2 years ago, I remember going through that process. And the reason why I bring up my question is just for that. It has nothing to do with 25 years. I understand 25 years down the road, but I just don't want to start approving stuff up here, especially now that we're fixing to incubate or it's in the incubator stage, our Wormser Road, I'm sorry, not Wormser.
Yeah?
But I want to bring that one up too.
Our Char-Ruthinger Road. I just want to make sure, I mean, Commissioner Galo and Doc is correct on the fact that we don't want to start something all of a sudden, you know, it doesn't have enough cement, or it's not, the base is not correct, or, you know, there's going to be too much traffic, a lot of heavy traffic on there, and my dad says it best, we always start something, it seems like a year later, we're fixing it. And why? Why can't we just plan it correctly? And I guess that's what I'm just trying to figure out how to do it. So with your
Yeah.
statement,
yeah.
it rang a bell, so that's the reason why I brought my question.
No, and I think it's a really good point. The MTP itself is going to help set the stage for some of those things, so that you have kind of a longer range idea of what's going on, so that you can do the planning in advance and not have it lingering out. But some of the things that Kirby mentioned about having more data and analytics that you're regularly reporting on are going to be super important to that too.
Let me ask you
Oftentimes we
this,
just
times
Yeah.
running, do we have much more? I think we have a pretty good idea what this
Yeah,
plan does.
In the interest of time, could you
Yeah.
just show one more slide that speaks to the actual,
schedule.
yes, that would be good. And just know that making the goals is one part, and we're actually we'll actually create a project list of projects that will get our input and your input as well on.
So really, this is an ongoing process, but really what's changed is the performance measures that have to be updated because federal requirements now are asking for performance-based analytics to be able to gauge how federal dollars are being utilized. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
But hasn't that always been the case? I mean, hasn't it always been, David, maybe you can answer it better. Hasn't it always been, okay, what's the most bang for the buck, you know, as far as traffic lanes or traffic miles traversed and, you know, or
Yep.
accident reduction? I mean, I remember Mr. McGee up here the other day talking about, you know, Cuatro Vientos and how he's already done the study and different things like that. So I don't know what's really changed except now we're talking bicycles and, you know, walking trails and different things.
Hooters.
Yeah, just basically to answer your question, Mr. Gallo, it has been an ongoing process that we work through with safety at the utmost in front of everything. Unfortunately, we don't have the funding to take care of all the issues that we have within the city, so we kind of prioritize based on the performance measures and our planning to try to get the biggest bang for our buck.
I don't think
Well,
it's
if I
anything
could
to
add to
do.
that, Commissioner Galo, no, there was a day when the transportation decisions, somebody asked earlier in the meeting, you know, if we have an idea of where our road's gonna go, why don't we buy the right of way now? Was that you, Mayor?
Right.
We've already been through that long,
Yeah.
believe me.
It's a good question, because that makes sense. But, and there was a day when federal government would just come in and build roads and, you know, maybe strike a deal with a private landowner. I mean, those were several decades ago. We've gotten from there to now in 2015, where we had the FAST Act, where we've all agreed that the better way to do the process is to have an agreed upon metrics that we're using to say when we should invest millions and sometimes billions of dollars into our local economies and transportation, we should be measuring the right things. And maybe all the time, maybe the number one thing isn't vehicle flow. Maybe it's safety. And maybe we need to consider multimodal, not just vehicle traffic. Maybe we need to, that doesn't mean make it all for bikes, but maybe we should spend a few percentage points of the money we're spending on other modes of traffic so that other people can get around, older people or children. So now we have that with the FAST Act. We have some established metrics to use that we're going to agree on so that we can then gauge, are we spending the money the right way and on the right projects?
Okay, we need to move on. I think we've got some stuff. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next is item B. And if I'm mispronouncing your name, please forgive me. It's Duong?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
You got it. Yeah, that was a great.
For 4 times.
Good shot there.
I would not have expected that to occur. Great, so thanks for having me here. My name is Stephen Duong. I'm a vice president of urban planning with the firm called AECOM. I'm based out of Dallas. So I'm here to give you all kind of an introduction, a little update to a project that we are working on and contractually obligated to the North Central Texas Council of Governments, the Dallas-Fort Area MPO. But we're also collaborating with Mr. Kirby and 5 other MPOs along the I-35 corridor on. And I want to note that in the agenda, it says the project title is actually high-speed rail, but actually what you're going to hear from me is we're referring to this as a high-speed transportation study because we're evaluating several different modes in addition to traditional high-speed rail. So I'll leave ample time at the end for questions. I'm not going to go into a deep technical dive on all the technologies in lieu of time, but I'm going to give a quick introduction of what we're kind of trying to accomplish in the study, the schedule of what we're doing, and the primary, I guess, moments of input that we would like to hear from you all to help influence our study. So the overall study itself, I mentioned earlier, we're evaluating several different technologies that move both passengers and cargo at rapid speeds along the I-35 corridor going into the future. What we're trying to work at is a couple different things. One, which technology should we seriously consider in the state of Texas, specifically along this 35 corridor between Dallas-Fort Worth to Laredo going into the future, knowing that the paradigm of technology around transportation is rapidly shifting. The second is, depending on which technologies we want to consider, where should those potential stations be? Where should those potential really high-level corridors be? And specifically, how do those combinations most benefit the communities along the corridor, Laredo included? So the background of this project is in 2017, another EIS was completed that we call TOPPERS, which stands for...
Before you go any further, it's beyond Texas, is it not? It includes Mexico?
Sorry. Oh, the study area for this one? Yeah, so technically, our study boundaries go from the Dallas-Fort Worth area to Laredo. However, we are studying in such a way that all the options we're looking at for both passengers and freight do not preclude going into Mexico. However, our formal study boundary ends at Laredo.
Okay, because there's the current border, US-Mexico border master plan. Is this something that is going to be incorporated in there? And if not, maybe, we should, since we're.
Or does it go to Monterey, I guess is the question, right?
Yes, and Monterey is the question everyone brings up, and we would hope that our study at the end could give you and arm you with information to be able to make that decision for yourselves on how you would like to take it forward.
Initially, Commissioner Galo and myself, I think 3 years ago, had a meeting in San Antonio with,
At least 3, yeah.
4 years ago about this, but it was questioned if it was gonna go through Laredo or gonna go through the valley.
Sure.
And so obviously, I think y'all already made your assessment, and it looks like it's coming through Laredo.
I would say we've made the assessment. This is the scope that was given to us by the North Central Texas Council of Governments.
Even better, so that's good. So then apparently it was gonna go from here to Monterrey, Monterrey to Querétaro, Querétaro to Mexico City. That's a long range. Is that still reasonable scope?
I'm not in our scope, that is not the case. In our scope, we are specifically identifying the 35 corridor from Laredo to Dallas-Fort Worth. So the history of this project, actually, which I was about to describe, is a environmental study that was completed in 2017 called the Texas-Oklahoma Passenger Rail Study. And that study specifically was from Laredo up to Oklahoma City. So our study is in some ways a continuation of that. What we call it is sort of a bridging study. The idea is that before that environmental study proceeds to what we call a Tier 2 EIS, which is more in depth, we want to update the findings of the original study to include viability of new technologies that were not mature enough to be considered in the original study. So the original EIS completed in 2017, it specifically only studied high-speed rail. Our job is to then pose the question, what other technologies should be viable and considered as the study advances to a Tier 2 study? And do those assumptions that occurred in the first study still make sense in this kind of quick-changing landscape of transportation technology?
You got to give us a little more. What is this update that changed that now we need to incorporate? I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, I'll get into it in a minute. The primary question that we're looking to ask are whether the technology, specifically high-speed rail in the original Topper study, is the only technology that should be considered going forward, or should it be an expanded list? We haven't answered that question. That's the purpose of this study. Any other questions before I continue on? And you feel free to ask as I go on. A couple things that I want to emphasize about this study. One is that we are coming at this from a technology neutral standpoint. We understand that high-speed rail is extremely well understood around the world. It's been built, has an excellent safety track record. However, there are new technologies that get people really excited, namely Hyperloop is one that gets a lot of public airtime, especially in Texas. So despite one being really mature and one being very new and exciting, we are treating all the technologies kind of from the same level. We just want to stack them up against each other and measure and say, is one or both or none really viable to continue further studying as time goes on. So our study is intended to complete just around the turn of the new calendar year. We began this March, and where we're at right now is we've kind of collected most of the data we think we need to further the study, and we are visiting all 6 MPOs along the 35 corridor that we're currently engaged with to kind of let them know these are the technologies we're looking at. This is kind of the assumptions we are making about these technologies as we go and further evaluate them. One of the key interesting things about the study is when you say some of these technology names to different people, they have different assumptions of how these technologies operate and what they may look like and how we may deploy them. We want to kind of establish with all MPOs, these are assumptions we are measuring off of, so that as we make comparisons, everyone in their mind is thinking about these technologies in the same way, so that when we say high-speed rail between you all or to Austin or San Antonio, they're thinking of the same kind of technology that we are. The intention for this study as we go through the summer and the fall is to provide a technical report towards the end of the year. We will come back to you for a formal presentation, much like this one, to tell you what our evaluation of these technologies are and their compatibility with the greater Laredo area. However, we expect to be engaged with you throughout the summer and the fall, should you have questions, and more importantly, should you want to provide input to us on things we should really keep in mind as we consider the viability of these technologies. This is another more closer detailed look, kind of a week by week. Our hope is that we will re-engage you in a more formal context in the beginning October, pending schedules and availability. And we expect we do these meetings with all the MPOs in kind of rounds. So we consider this our first round of engagements with all 6 MPOs. The second round of meetings is the October timeframe. And then the hope is that should you agree with our initial findings, and I kind of want to emphasize right here actually that our findings won't necessarily say a specific technology is the most viable in Laredo. Our hope is at the end of the study we say, based on the way these technologies are maturing and the cost curves of how they're being deployed, we think these are worth considering going forward into the future. So we hope to make that kind of final presentation to you all in October, and then hopefully do another presentation at the end of the year or just around the new calendar year.
So you were retained by the private sector, or were you, or some institution, or?
I'm sorry, what was that?
You know, your presence here is being paid by the private sector, or?
No, so I'm a urban planner with a firm called AECOM, but our contract was with the MPO in Dallas-Fort Worth. So I'm representing the study team, if you will. I don't represent any of the firms who are actually trying to deploy these technologies.
No, what I'm saying, if the private sector is interested, I mean, that's a good sign, because
Yes.
usually that's
They
where
are very,
financing comes in.
I'll get that in just a
No,
minute.
but
They are,
He's funded by the Dallas MPO,
Right,
yes.
not, so.
right.
Yeah, but they are, the private sector is interested, hence this study exists. And we'll get into the technologies in just a minute towards the end. So the technologies that we are formally considering in this study, and I'll go over each of them quickly and answer some questions about them. I mentioned a couple of them already. Hyperloop is the one I think that gets the most airtime. They have stated publicly that the Laredo to Dallas-Fort Worth corridor is one of their 10 priority areas in the entire world for initial Hyperloop implementation. That is a sentiment echoed by many Hyperloop companies, not just Virgin Hyperloop One and Elon Musk SpaceX. Several companies have made that statement also. We're also looking at maglev, which is a form of high-speed rail, obviously using magnetic propulsion to move at high speeds. Traditional high-speed rail, which is what you see happening between Dallas and Houston, which is a high-speed rail, but it doesn't use magnets. It just uses wheels on a track at high speeds. Regional rail, which is the essentially equivalent of Amtrak, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And then guaranteed transit, which is actually a really new concept. Guaranteed transit is essentially a high-speed, or I would say high-end bus that moves in a dedicated lane, often a managed lane or an HOV lane. And it is using dynamic pricing in that lane to control the time and speed of that bus in that lane. The idea and where the name guaranteed comes from is that, one, for the rider, you are guaranteed to arrive to your destination of your origin in a specific time. And that is meant to be guaranteed financially by that dynamic pricing system. So if you, as a rider, are set to arrive at a specific destination, let's say at 9 a.m., and your bus using that dedicated lane arrives at 9:05, you receive a financial refund on your entire trip. And the idea is that you use a dynamic pricing system and a managed lane to control the conditions around the corridor to ensure a guaranteed transit time. So it's a new concept that is meant to be affordable, flexible, and sort of a complement to other kind of BRT type of concepts you see being deployed.
Mayor, if I may, what about autonomous vehicles?
That is also built into it. So the idea is that phase one is a traditional bus. Over time, that would transition to a fleet of automated vehicles, buses that are platooning along the corridor.
So are we really kind of looking here at, I guess, going back to Rick Perry's corridors?
It has definitely a lot of references to it. It is not formally a spin-off of that at all. However, that is
Because you could actually put a couple or three of these things within that corridor, right?
correct. Yes,
Simultaneously, if you're gonna, the economies of scale, being able to do that, so you could have your Hyperloop
correct.
for packages, your high-speed rail for
Passengers. That's
passengers.
exactly right. So part of our evaluation will be to say where are the pros and cons and benefits of these systems, how do they stack up, and then to create a whole system that actually makes sense along 35 corridor. How does this play out? Because we realize technically you could do, let's say, Hyperloop and guaranteed transit between Laredo and San Antonio, then switch to something else between the cities. But that would cause you to have more forced transfers as a passenger having to move between systems. So you lose a lot of the benefit of the speed. So where does that line draw, and how do these systems actually shape up at the end? That's what we're currently investigating.
Yeah, 'cause that was always the question. I mean, you could have a high-speed train, but if you're gonna stop in San Antonio, how high, how fast can you really get up to?
Exactly, and that's one of the things that we will be evaluating. However, we'll also look at options such as, if you're familiar with the way Hyperloop works, it is always intended to be point to point. So as you pass by a city, there's always an express route and a intermediate stop that stops in, let's say, San Antonio in your case. So even if you added stops, you would not actually have a performance hit to the system because there's always a bypass express route. So that is a potential, theoretical, I emphasize, advantage of Hyperloop compared to, let's say, traditional high-speed rail. But we know that that is clearly at this point theoretical since the technology has not yet been deployed in the States at a fully functioning system. So those are the pros and cons we'll be weighing as we kind of evaluate the viability of these technologies going forward.
As far as right-of-ways, are we contemplating using, I-35 right-of-way as much as possible?
So we're at this level, we aren't saying whether you should or should not use a specific right-of-way. What we'll be looking at is, does the general I-35 corridor make sense from an engineering perspective of these technologies? So if you're moving at a certain speed with those kind of specified turn radiuses and horizontal and vertical clearances, does it make sense? Then we'll look at other utility corridors and other general corridors to say, does any of these actually provide the right environment for these technologies to be deployed? If it does, it's worth considering. If it does not, it should probably be taken off the table. So we're not getting to the level where we're saying this particular right-of-way is better or worse, or you should use this right-of-way. We're kind of using the term corridors. This general corridor is viable. This corridor is likely not viable for XYZ technologies.
Has some of these been, are they currently in effect, like in China or some other country? Is some country using this system? This multimodal?
All the technologies exist in some form except for Hyperloop. Now, Hyperloop does exist technically. However, it's only in a test track in Nevada right now, built by Virgin Hyperloop One. It's a 500-meter test track in which the system is currently operating at about 230 miles an hour or so. However, they are currently considering Texas, Missouri, and the Midwest for a 5-mile certification test track so that Elaine Chow's new Commission on Emerging Technology can certify the technology for deployment. That one is expected.
So aside from Nevada, there's no other country or state that...
That's, there's also a test track in construction outside of Paris in France. Those are the only two in the world currently for Hyperloop. High-speed rail and maglev operate obviously everywhere in the world. China has probably, very likely, the most extensive system. Japan is generally the producer of that technology, though, and Amtrak and regional rail occur everywhere.
Thank you.
Sure. So I want to take a little bit of time. I think I'm not going to dive into the technical specs of each of these technologies, but I wanted to give you all, one, a little bit of time to ask me questions about these technologies, but also, two, the whole point of our study, a significant part of it is to gather input from you all to understand, one, are you interested in the technologies? And two, if you are, how would you envision them being deployed in your community? Because that will help inform the way we score and evaluate the viabilities of these technologies. So for instance, we know that freight is a large component of the Laredo economy. High-speed rail, maglev traditionally has never really been used in a freight system. And there are a lot of different reasons for that. However, let's say the Hyperloop, while theoretical, is intended to be designed for both passengers and freight alike, equally. So does something like that interest you, or does the guaranteed transit, because of its affordability and scalability over time, despite its slower speed, really interest you? Or is it all of the above? Those are the kind of insights that we would like to get from you all to help shape our project as it goes forward through the summer and the early fall.
Say all of the above, unless...
Yeah, I would.
Why wouldn't high-speed rail be used for freight? I mean, that seems like the most logical thing. I mean, I would be talking to UPS and FedExpress and saying, hey, how much do we want to buy in for?
Yeah, so there are a couple different reasons, and I, being not a high-speed rail, propulsion engineer, let's say, can't answer all of them, but I will say a couple things. One is that, let's say you're talking about maglev. It's using magnetic levitation to float above the tracks. That actually changes the load-bearing weight it can take on the train itself. So you could use it, let's say, maybe for just-in-time or high-value time deliveries, but you could use it for traditional cargo because it's just too heavy. Traditional high-speed rail also requires 100% of the time so far in the world an exclusive track closed loop right away. It does not do well in a true, I would say, multimodal situation, whereas, let's say, traditional freight rail and commuter rail can share the same track. So there's some flexibility in that system. So there are different conditions that make them viable. Technically, could you use high-speed for freight? Probably, but it has not yet been done by those various companies.
I think as we go through this process, as you and the rest of the MPOs along the corridor go through this process, and you start to eliminate areas or technologies that are not viable, I think that would be a much better time for us to actually speak on what technologies we would like to see. I mean, obviously, we want to see all of them, but if you're going to take 4 of these away because they don't work in that I-35 corridor, then it's a little premature for us to be telling you what we would prefer. I would say that anything that would allow connectivity between our area and the rest of Texas and into Oklahoma and into Mexico, we would welcome, because it would help open our borders up and increase commerce, seeing that we are driven, our economy is driven by trade. And we would love to see that. And we would also like our people, or our constituents, to be able to travel throughout Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, all the way to Canada really quickly if they chose to. So we would welcome any one of these technologies, but I don't think they're all going to be viable. And so I continue to think that it would be a little premature to start talking about what we want, in my opinion, because we don't know which ones are actually going to be technological feasible along that 35 corridor.
Sure. So there are a couple questions I think that we could ask that actually you can answer now that help shape our direction immediately. So for instance, a question we've been working with the other MPOs on is, if you were, let's say theoretically, to have a station for one of these technology, let's just use high-speed rail for now as an example. Do you all have a specific preference in maybe your long-range plan, or maybe just right now, whether you'd prefer, let's say, an urban core station or one on the periphery? Because that actually changes the way we would score some of these technologies as being viable, because it would obviously change the dynamics of the curvature of the alignments. So some discussion like that.
Well, we're a tale of 2 cities here. What I mean is, one is the passenger aspect, right? And so we have commuters that, you could potentially live in San Antonio, or live in Laredo and work in San Antonio. There's so many options. It's really quick travel. But we're also trade. And so when you talk about trade, that would probably be on the periphery somewhere where it wouldn't interfere with our proper flow of traffic that we see. But if we're talking about commuter trains, then I think something densely populated, where we would be able to travel to, park, and then use that rail for whatever vacations or work or whatever we wanted to, would probably be appropriate. I don't know if anybody else has any.
But also too, I think our interest would be heightened if Mexico is incorporated.
Yes.
Somehow, because it's not only this way. We do a lot of business going the other way. Yeah.
And we recognize, of course, that the limit of your study is here. But we're thinking beyond that, because we're international city, and so we have to think both ways here. We have to think into Mexico and into the United States as well. So that's why we continue to harp on that point.
I think something I'm hearing from you is that we'll try and place a special emphasis on maybe a scoring criteria that talks about the ability or flexibility of the system to continue south of the border, regardless of where it ends up in Laredo. And that can potentially be
And we also have security issues as well, right? And so if we have transportation, there'll be a lot of security issues. And so that's something that I think you have to incorporate Border Patrol and everybody else, just to make sure that as people are traveling internationally, you have that incorporated in there. And so I don't know whether that means a substation where you have to stop people and ask them.
Make them stop in what county?
And so something along those lines, and
Well, you do it like the airport, where you have to go through security,
you have to go through security and those sorts of things. We're very different than the rest of the areas that you're gonna go study. You'll see, we're very unique.
But also too, I think it invites investors to, the more you open it up, obviously Mexico has a, inherent interest too, to participate, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are all considerations I think we're considering somewhat aware of, but it helps us to hear it obviously in person and hear it directly for.
And the second thing?
Sure.
You said the second thing, you said there was 2 questions that you might want to ask us.
Oh man, that was so many minutes ago now. I think that was probably over 10 minutes ago.
I was waiting for the ask of money, with this MPO help finance.
Mao, I really, I'm
The one
sorry.
thing is whether we want it would be urban or whether we would want something on the outskirts.
Oh, right. So that's what's one big consideration. The other would be, would you be, in some of these potential locations, would you want them, let's say, co-located? So in Laredo's context, is there an opportunity or facility or a site somewhere that you would be interested in, let's say, a co-freight and co-passenger facility? Because that would also change some of the dynamics we would want to look at in terms of potential station locations.
For us, it's a must, freight has gotta be, in the formula some way, and of course, passengers.
But no, when I say co-location, and I think goes to what we spoke about earlier, that Carol, I think the frustration level, I think you probably want to separate those two.
I do believe that you're talking two separate things, and if I'm
Well,
not,
you can do two locations and come back to one corridor.
obviously they'll come back to one corridor, if you will, but we would want to separate the freight aspect of it from the passenger aspect of it, because I think there's two different really viable economies there. One is the economy of people, and the other is the economy of freight. And so separating those out as far as being able to, because it will take a long time to process freight, and we don't want to be delaying passengers as well.
I think you could do it very much like an airport, you know, where you having both come in, but you have the traffic, I mean, the public coming in from one side and the freight on a different side. Just,
That's possible too.
yeah,
See, but keep in mind nowadays, there's
as long as you separate the two.
pre-clearance and post-clearance. CBP could be situated in different, we have dual customs.
Yeah, customs, you can have border
We
protection, you
can
have
do
all
all sorts
those.
of things.
And we
like that.
have, just so you know, we do have the capacity to have customs clearance, pre-clearance here for the rest of the United States. And so we're really one of the only areas that allows that. And so there's a lot of reasons why I think Laredo should be the choice, just so you're aware.
And then we have, how many buses a day going to Chicago? 50 something?
Chicago, well, from Mexico, we have about 120 daily from Mexico. We're the number one port
40-something.
there for tourist buses.
But I'm
They go to
going,
Chicago.
40-something buses a day that go full to Chicago.
Again, we have two different economies here. You have the transportation of people that are visiting both into Mexico and into the United States. So you have a lot of tourism aspect. But then there's also the freight aspect of it. And so it would be difficult in my mind to be able to have a lot of 18-wheelers dropping off freight inside an urban area. I think it would be a planning nightmare for Mr. Snideman, how to get trucks in and out of this area without having.
So I think you could do it like, it's like an airport.
That's true, if it's large enough facility. Yeah.
And there are urban airports, suburban airports, rural airports. So we'll, I think at this point, obviously leave most things on the table. I think there are very few things so far we've really ruled off from an engineering perspective of heli technologies. Probably the first thing that we're really evaluating is whether the time savings on these technologies make sense versus current existing technologies. Right. So some of them obviously are marginal versus others theoretically. So we'll be keeping you all informed as we go throughout the process and we'll look at, and I'm sure, like you said, that will allow you to provide better feedback to our team. But we wanted to use today to kind of start the formal engagement with you all and let you know what it is that we're trying to answer. And hopefully if you all have any ideas or something that you're really excited about, please feel free to tell us and we can kind of incorporate it as early as we can and to help shape our analysis. So unless there's further questions, I'll be around for a little while to take questions if there are more afterwards, but thanks for the time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I know this is futuristic, but it's
Oh, it's fantastic. Is what it is.
I'll just take an extension of the toll road and come down, come Seguin through and come all the way down to Laredo. Well,
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, next item is status report by the Abrazo partners.
Yes,
The city of-
there's no
Yes,
update today, but I wanted to let Commissioner know that we will be, or the committee rather, I'll be working with the Abrazo partners on this. And also, I live on Hidalgo. I cross the Bridge 2
Yeah.
multiple times a week, I mean, every day, on bicycle, on foot, also in a vehicle. But 80–90% of my trips are on bicycle. So I'm very familiar with this area, and I'll be working with them on this project. And when there is an update, we'll make sure you're plugged in, because I know that was a
And as
request.
far as any the recommendation that y'all may have, any other key points going to be whether we invite people or, fix those 4 blocks just so, look nice or attractive and people can kind of stare at them.
And I know
But-
we're looking at this, Mayor, and I just would encourage you to continue to talk to TxDOT and to be involved in all the decisions, because ultimately, a lot of the right-of-way is TxDOT, and so we're hoping that they help us with a lot of these things. But there was a difference, I think, of opinion as far as what we were wanting to do in this area. But I think there is room to work together, and I think you would agree with that, sir, Mr. Salazar?
I think so, Mr. Martinez. I mean, it's an absolutely wonderful idea to, get those 4 blocks built up and a lot more pleasing than they are today. But again, there are some issues that we have with TxDOT when it comes to the travel lanes out there that we can discuss. But we'd be happy to meet with you. Give us a call anytime soon. so we can get to some kind of viable solution that we can both compromise on something.
And if there's any way to expedite this, to actually start getting people safely across this quickly, so whether it's raised crosswalks or whatever it may be, I think we should look at that sooner rather than later.
Understood.
I think you guys are okay with that as well, correct?
We can certainly look at the crossings out there. We've seen those crosswalks, the timings. I personally walked them myself not too long ago. There's a couple of things that we can do to, I guess, expedite some of those crossings out there, find some time for the pedestrians, but I'm sure working together, we can come up with something.
Also, too, I think there's a lot of people, well, since we're the number one tourist bus destination, and people do get off, and I think they would want to shop a little bit for food, and I know the food truck business, may accommodate that need for them. So that's something that you all may, think about, especially that first block, or at least that, the first section there, that block that adjoins the bridge, maybe that could work.
Yeah,
And
I
also
think
two
there's
public bathrooms too, so I don't know if that,
You're
is
gonna
that,
make them cross the highway to get to the
Well,
food
I don't
trucks
know.
and the bathrooms?
see, that's the thing, I don't know.
Well, at this point, it's a highway, but that's maybe something we can talk to TxDOT about, declassifying that as a highway into something different that would allow us to make that area more attractive, more walkable, more integrated with the rest of the city.
Don't slow
have
down,
looked at
don't
that.
slow down the traffic.
Yeah, we've talked about whether that's a possibility, but I think ultimately there are concerns my big concern is to make sure that the flow of traffic continues. But number one concern is the safety of people crossing east-west, right? And so, so I think there is room to collaborate on this, but I think maybe leaving one intersection where people can walk across, something along those lines, meeting in the middle, I think is what we have to do. But sir, as far as inviting people, I think we do want to invite, we want to beautify this area. I think that the council has been extremely committed to that and saying that we have to connect. Obviously, there'll be some separation that occurs no matter what, and you have a highway in the middle. There is concern from customs as far as trying to move traffic as quickly as possible, and TxDOT has the same concern. Declassifying part of this highway is a possibility. I think that's something that we've discussed. Sir, you want to talk on that?
And the purpose of that declassifying would be, that would give us maybe some greater flexibility, because as
The only
David
problem is that we
Salner-
would have then funding issues that would go into place where we would have to maintain that road to a certain standard ourselves. And so we have to be very careful
Yeah,
with
we'd
that
have
as
to
well.
look at that,
Yes.
for sure.
You're absolutely right. I think the biggest portion that you just mentioned, the biggest part of that is that we do have to maintain all the way to the port of entry, which is, again, it becomes a nightmare when you have people coming in and going out. Any reduction in travel lanes out there would cause a nightmare for us backing up. Even we do to declassify it, you're gonna slow them down, it's gonna back up into 35. Business 35 is currently San Bernardo, I think. That's what's classified as business 35. But again, the biggest concern would be the traffic coming in and out of the port of entry right now. That would be a big concern.
Well, there are examples elsewhere where it's done, where it's been done, and Judge brought that up last time. He's from Brownsville, and they have that, it's not a highway classification all the way in. But I will say this, in my experiences daily there, biking and walking across, and the choke point is at the bridge itself, at the port. And so it's not like we would be congesting this area. The area during peak times is already congested. All we'd be doing is spacing that congestion. We wouldn't be adding to it, wouldn't be adding congestion. But there is a real concern with safety. So it's been a month now that I've been 80–90% of my trips on bikes in the city and across there daily. And almost twice I've been hit on that bicycle with people in that area. And it's because there's a lot of people who are crossing there that don't cross regularly, or there are a lot of vehicles through that port that don't use it regularly. And to them, maybe their thought isn't looking for pedestrians or bicyclists because it's not designed very well at all for pedestrian or bicyclists, but
I agree
they're using
completely,
it.
sir.
So we understand what your
Yeah.
direction is. We're gonna follow it. We're gonna work with TxDOT to find some good compromise, and I'll keep you regularly updated on this, and we'll see if we can expedite it.
Thank you, sir.
Wonderful,
Appreciate that.
thank you. Any other comment? No? Next is the status report by TxDOT on the outer loop alignment study.
Good afternoon. Roberto Rodriguez with Texas. And for the status report, we have the consultant Jacobs here. We have Nishan with Jacobs. He'll be presenting that.
Wonderful, thank you. Your full name for the record, please, as you present your study.
Let's see. It's not working.
Can't come fast enough, that's a great project.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Nishant Kukadia. I'm with Jacobs Engineering, and I'm the consultant helping TechStart on this project.
Thank you, welcome.
The intent of this presentation today is to give you an update on what we have been doing. It's just the introductory one. We'll be happy to come again as you want us to and present as we move forward in the study. Well, we've been talking about safety a little bit. Each meeting that we start with as TechStart or Jacobs, we start with a safety minute, and so I figured that it would be a good time to talk about safety. One of Commissioner Ryan's big thing, TechStart's commission, is that end the streak. Since November 2000, there has not been a single day in the state of Texas without a fatality. That is 18 plus years, and in those 18 years, we have lost 65,000 lives. So it's very important. If you look at the counties, about 200 counties in Texas, 254 total, have population less than that. So just imagine how big the impact is. What we can do, we can buckle up, we can help our friends, families remind about that. Drive the speed limit, be safe, especially when we are here with trucks around us. Be sober, don't drive while drinking. And also cell phones. Right now, the biggest thing is cell phones. It's a distraction. And like you mentioned, also take care of pedestrians and bicyclists. They are also there, and we need to share the road. Right. So today's agenda is to give you some background and history. Obviously, you all are familiar with the Laredo Outer Loop. It has been talked about for quite some time. Look at the overview and objectives. What's the schedule that we are looking at for this study? What are the growth trends in the region that is leading to this study, and more on that? And what are the segments that we're looking at, preliminary routes, what typical sections, and the next steps? Okay? So there was an initial study completed in 2007. At that point, TechStart looked at the Laredo Outer Loop and came up with an alternative, but there was no funding. So that got stalled, and now we are picking it up again, looking at it. So some of the reasons we are looking at it is to provide more capacity and resiliency in the network. We have looked at the thoroughfare plan and how it would interact, like Judge, you were saying, about, or Mayor, you were saying about the connectivity between 35, 59, 359, and 83. It will help with that. Also, Laredo is going to grow towards the east, right? I mean, it's locked on the west side with the border, but east is where it's going to grow. And we have heard about the 4th and 5th bridge connection. So that will impact how trade flows through here. Freight is going to flow. So that is the other consideration. So this gives you a map of what is the connecting points we're looking at. We're looking at the Camino Colombia and I-35 towards the north, coming towards the east, and all the way to where the 4th and 5th bridge will be crossing. That is somewhere in between the city of Rio Bravo and city of El Cenizo. It's in that region that it will connect, and it will connect with all the highways along it. The objective of this study is to look at the feasibility of the proposed route. The previous study was done about 10 plus years ago. Things have changed. Let's take a look at it in terms of the development patterns, the traffic, what it will look at, the environmental impacts, all of that. Also look at getting property owner and stakeholder input. We're going to meet with the property owners, we're going to meet with the stakeholders. This is one of the reasons we are here, is to get your feedback and input on this. And then develop a preliminary conceptual alignment that can then lead into the environmental and schematic phase, so that then you can start looking into where you want to reserve the right of way and how it can progress into construction. Okay. So this is the project schedule. We started in March. So that was when we had the initial kickoff meeting with TechStart and TPNP. We have looked at design values, what the facility should look like, and I'll show you in a few slides what the typical section is going to be. We have looked at the constraints, what are the development constraints, physical constraints, environmental constraints like wetlands, floodplains. We have also coordinated with KCS as a railroad and look at what they are planning. When in 2007, they were also planning similar expansion. So we are working with them. Right now, we are looking at preliminary route options. I'll show you the alternatives that we have in a few slides. But then we'll be looking at meetings with the property owners and refining the route options based on the input that we are going to receive. And then later this year, we'll be looking to evaluate the options that we have so that then we can go to the public and have a public meeting and then finalize finalize route options and develop cost estimates. And then we'll have a report sometime early next year. Now we looked at the growth trends in the region and looked at two different estimates. And this is from the State Demographic Center. Completely different estimates, and I know the MPO is doing the MTP and they'll have different population estimates. We'll take that into consideration. This one shows that Laredo is going to grow at a little bit higher rate than the United States, but a little bit lower than the state of Texas. The other one
I can tell you that's probably wrong already.
Yeah.
That's the next slide. Texas Water Development Board has another estimate. And you can see over here that it's growing more than 4 times the rate of the United States and almost 40% higher, or 80% higher than the state of Texas. And that's all not only for Laredo, all the border regions, right? El Paso as well as the Rio Grande Valley, they're going faster, but Laredo is faster than the other ones. Okay. So we looked at a high-level growth trends that is expected. So this is based on the ESRI, which is the GIS mapping software, but they look at what the development patterns will look like. And this is the land cover that they're looking at in 2011. And this one is where it shows 2050. And you can see between the two slides that it's growing further east and north. And some of the developments that are currently happening near the Uniroyal interchange as well as the racetrack are not here. But we know that those are also happening at the north end with all the land uses that are changing. Okay. This is the traffic map. Again, just to give a reference, a lot of traffic obviously on I-35 and the existing Loop 20. Not as much towards the south end on US 83, but like SH 359, because of all the development along SH 359, you can see a lot of localized traffic, and that's going to grow or as we go further. This is based on the statewide analysis model, so it's not based on MPO model right now, but as we do further study, we'll develop the traffic projections to take that into account.
Yeah, could I ask you, what is that green line there at the bottom, more toward the right? You know, that zigzag?
That's the study area that we started looking at,
I'm sorry?
the study area.
The study area?
Is it the boundary of the study area?
It's about.
Oh, the county line? Oh,
This
okay.
one?
No.
No, the bottom one, the bottom green one,
Keep going, down, right, to the right.
that one.
Yeah.
Oh, this one, that's the county boundary, yes.
That's what, boundary? That's
County, Webb County boundary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have that zag, does it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think I remember that.
It's not like that?
Yeah, well, at one time it wasn't, but I think it did change, many years ago.
We'll review it and make sure that it's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. We also talked about truck traffic, right? This is a graphic that really shows how much truck traffic has grown in the Laredo region, the border crossings particularly. If you look back at 1996, it's more than doubled since 1996. But even since 2008 or 9, when the economy kind of slowed down, since then it has almost doubled, right? So a lot of trucks moving through Laredo as compared to what it used to be earlier. This shows some of the planned and programmed improvements. Obviously, we have looked at the thoroughfare plan that is on the left side over here. The network, the green line or the dark line that is shown, that was part of the thoroughfare plan as the Laredo outer loop. We are trying to connect it further north over here near the Camino Colombia now. But it was even considered back when you did the thoroughfare plan. On the right side is what TxDOT has planned and programmed improvements in its current tip-step, UTP, as well as the long-range plan.
How wide is that corridor that you're showing the little purple goes through?
Sorry, which one?
The wide is the corridor that you have there on the right side?
That's a 2-mile wide corridor. But it's just a study area, it's not a corridor.
No.
Yeah.
How fast can we get that identified or semi-locked in? Because If you look there on highway, between Highway 59 and 359, the majority is one landowner. On the north side, you're gonna have one landowner for probably quite an extensive way. And I think it's very important to the commissioner and myself, because we have no north-south connector between 359 and 59.
Right.
Closer to town.
Closer to town, because whenever there's a major accident, they must go all the way back to Aguilares,
And they're stuck
go all the
there
way
for
around.
hours.
And as you mentioned earlier, the expansion east along 359, you're getting schools, you're getting, stuff going every day. And so we don't want to have to go back and have to take out a whole bunch of, housing or whatever it may be. So the quicker we can get this alignment done, the better. Up north and south, it's wide open. But that's the area that we have to concentrate on right now, is Highway 359.
So this study will give us the route options, and then it has to go into environmental and NEPA, and schematic. So once NEPA is cleared, then TxDOT has the ability to start acquiring right-of-way. So depending on where we prioritize, it's a big project, right? It's not going to be done one at a time, all at once. So if we prioritize, let's say, that segment, then it would move further. And I agree that when TxDOT looked at this in 2007, there were more gaps in there that you can go through. They are no longer there. So it is going fast. So in terms of timeline, I don't know when it can happen, but
I think, let's clarify something here. It can't go that quickly, but first of all, the first step again is getting the study done, getting the schematic drawn up. But as far as acquiring right-of-way, at this point, the project is not funded. Currently, there is no funding for it. For me to jump on and start acquiring right-of-way would be a little difficult at this time. However, we could start with a final schematic, asking the county for donations of properties or whatnot, especially in the area of 359. But as it stands right now, the first step is getting the schematic drawn up. This is a route
And that was my question, because I think you do have some property owners that are willing to donate,
Right.
but you got to identify it there and lock it in. And then, like I said, because the county is prepared to go ahead and start doing some cleaning and stuff, if we, whether it's a county road or whatever in the interim, to be, at least to be able to use that section. And I know that was something, I don't know anybody from the RMA is here, but that was something that, I asked them to prioritize, saying, hey, can you get these dollars and maybe get this thing paid? Because that's a huge relief.
And it's something that we can work with Commissioner Guerrero, because that's an area of concern for me as well, the 359 corridor there. If we ever got to the point where we were ready to move forward with it, that's where I would propose that we start first and then work our way up north and south from there. But unfortunately, this time, this is the first step in moving forward and getting this study done.
When will your study be complete? I guess that's ultimately, so that we can get to the next one, spring.
Right.
Spring, so you mean March, April, May, June, July?
right now it's expected in like February or March.
February or March.
It depends on, so what David said is we have to meet with the property owners and get their buy-in, and so we can identify the right location. So if we do it right early, then the delay later is less.
Mayor,
So we'd rather want to spend time early on and meet with everyone and say, okay, does this work for you? And then you can have an agreement with the property owners to donate right of way or acquire right of way.
Okay, we have a comment or question by Commissioner Gonzalez.
If I may, let me, I guess, comment something and see we can go from there. I know a starting point would be definitely good between 59 and 359. Mr. Salazar, I heard a while back that Cuatro Vientos Road, where it stops right now at Manganaheim, I heard it was gonna go further south and connect to the underpass coming out from Rio Grande and Cenizo. How feasible is that still in the planning phase or taken into consideration? It's not a big area, it's not it's more feasible to start there. The reason I'm asking is because there is a colonia there that has no running water, sewage, and that would be great if we kickstart, take off from there, I guess, and that'll open the doors for a lot of different funding and everything.
It's always been our plan to finish up Loop 20 south, 283. We are using it in conjunction with this study to see how we're moving forward. I'm not sure we are in development authority with that yet,
Yeah,
but I know that.
actually, you might have a couple of alternatives, right,
Right.
on the presentation. And it does connect, the Loop 20 will eventually connect to the.
Espejo Molina,
outer
which
loop.
is the
Well,
underpass.
they will be down to the outer loop, to the new international bridge, and there will be an extension to Espejo Molina.
To answer your question, Mr. Gonzalez, if you ask me how feasible is it, that will probably get done before the outer loop. Okay. That's what it, what it would
Yes.
be. So,
Well, that's what I'm trying to.
Well, that's very feasible.
It's good for him, but not good for us.
Okay.
Yeah, we've developed a couple of alternatives, like you mentioned, connecting Loop 20 to the outer loop as well as US 83 and connecting to the Bridge 4 and 5. So these are the two alternatives that we have right now that we'll be working with the property owners and stakeholders to basically see how it works with them and refine them as we go.
So that's that little leg on the very bottom there that goes,
That is correct.
that's
I
the
like- that's
extension.
Loop 20,
like the top of B and the bottom of A.
top of B and the bottom of A. Bottom of A is, and B are generally the same, bottom portion are.
No, there's a loop there. I don't like those line of sight issues. It's a big curve.
Oh, okay, that portion, okay, near 359. You don't like that, okay. All right.
It's probably water issues, there's
Yeah,
creek
but
areas with.
and on the bottom of A, it doesn't have that very much. You look at that one, there's a true 90-degree bend in there.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why it is.
Well, that is somewhat because of the development that is along 359, to find a gap. So those are the two places that they're able to find a gap to cross 359.
On the alternative A, there's already a property allocated. I guess back in 2007, the property owners were visited, and it looks like they left a land right there for what was initially, the alternative A is what was initially proposed, the bottom portion of it. And alternative B, that curve, what it's doing is just taking the route way outside of the development, passing the La Pulga and the youth center, passing that location. That's what B is doing, that curve, is just to get away from the development.
Can you straighten that curve out any? Make it not so
It
severe?
is designed at 75 miles per hour.
Huh?
It is designed for 75 miles per hour speed. So it looks
I
like
know, but
90 degrees,
what's the purpose
like I said.
of coming back east?
Uh,
To
it's-
west?
To go around all that stuff.
Yeah, but what's the purpose of going east, is what you're saying? I mean,
Going
you
to
go
with
around
the
it.
alternative A, you mean?
But just,
I mean, that's
instead of
what- that
making
was
it a gentle
initially-
curve like you do on the bottom of A.
Well, like I said, alternative A, that was in the initial.
No, but what I'm saying, just take that hump out, if you just made it a gentle curve, what's,
I think it is a curve, but it's so zoomed out that it looks like it's a 90-degree turn. It's not. And actually,
well, it is a 90 degree, I mean, eventually,
it's
you're gonna go from north to west.
It's gonna be kind of like, let me
Due north,
see,
due west.
I mean, that is a 90-degree turn, and then
So
another
some of
90.
it is to stay along the property boundaries and not cut diagonally. Some of it was part of the consideration of how the design was laid out. But it doesn't mean that we cannot do what you're saying. What you're saying is sort of doing that, just connect like this.
Yes,
That's
uh-huh.
what
Yeah.
you're saying. We can look into that and see if that's feasible, yeah.
I mean, I know you're gonna have old, wellheads and things that they had to avoid at the beginning, but a lot of those are now starting to be abandoned, and so some of that corridor is opening up. Been no new drilling there whatsoever, so that's, there's no ongoing exploration on the east side of town.
The further east you can go, the better, I kind of feel.
Correct. And on the north side, let me just explain briefly. On the alternative A, this is kind of what was the initial thought. Let's go as far as we can to the east. The alternative A, what it's doing is being a side road to 35 instead of when especially that area on the North Laredo is being high developed. Once truck traffic is coming down on 35, now they have an alternative to either go the outer loop or 35, and they get to the same location, which is all those industrial parks that are being developed in the middle of those locations. So
I think there's gonna be urban development that's gonna happen in that area. And so you gotta push it as far east as possible. That whole thing over the next 50 years will develop with homes and all sorts of stuff. It will develop. It's already happening on the west, it's gonna happen on the east, and so planning something like this, I mean, I understand having parallels to I-35. In fact, I think McPherson and I think International should all be parallel to I-35, ultimately. But this is a loop to go around the city, right? And so if you try to come in and grab some of those parks that are already in existence right now, you're going to face 25 years from now, 50 years from now, you're going to face the same issue you're facing in Mines Road, and we're trying to avoid that. This is a loop to bypass the city as much as possible, in my opinion.
Well,
Yeah, you're right. You have to anticipate the growth.
the faster you can lock in 59, 359, I think, because the rest of it can be worked out later.
Down to 83 también.
Huh?
At some point, I think the 83, 359, 59.
Is 83 down there?
So we can start.
The 83 is pretty open right now.
Zapata Highway.
Oh, yes.
83, the 83 connection is pretty open right now. That's Hereford and stuff, you just go east, and then there's, there's no development whatsoever. The only development you have is on 359 right now, because where you cross 59, there's no development. And anything east, I don't think you're gonna have anything, it's clear sailing till you get to Camino Colombia. So really, that's the only choke point on 359 right now, so.
Anything
Wherever
else?
you pick it, let's pick it and start, like I said, work with the landowners to see. Because the more you go east, then you start getting into multiple landowners. Off of 359. From the first, I don't remember how many miles it is, you're gonna have, the majority is gonna be one landowner.
Okay.
Anything else?
Just a few more slides. So the overall plan is to have this as a freeway ultimate, but as demand increases, so initially it'll start with a 2-lane undivided facility, and then built out as a 4-lane divided, and then as we grow, have a 4-lane freeway section, so add the main lanes in between, and then expand to 6 lanes as necessary. And so the next steps, like I'd mentioned earlier, is work with the stakeholders and property owners and develop route options and come up with what we would say is a couple of route options, 1 or 2 route options that go into schematic and NEPA phase, and that's when you can start developing the schematic.
Going back to the width of the right-of-way, how much is the width?
400 is usual, so it'll increase
Be
as
enough
needed.
for future planning and, yeah.
Yeah, so it will vary depending on the grade as
Okay,
well
but
as.
that's, obviously that's enough to be an interstate.
Generally, yes.
Yeah, we don't wanna, have another Loop 20,
Right.
I-69 situation. Okay.
So it can be a 6-lane with a median barrier. It cannot have the grass median. As we come to an interchange, it will widen, right? Obviously, because you have to go over.
Just think 1604. That's what we want.
Yeah, that's exactly right,
That's what we want.
yeah. Eventually, in 30 years, 40 years from now.
Yeah.
All right?
That's more than 400 feet, no?
No, actually, this is a new approach that we've taken. We took it in Eagle Pass, Maverick County as well with the 400 feet. That's enough to get 3 interstate lanes and frontage roads under. It's enough.
3 on each side?
Yes.
So this is the bottom section.
Yeah, so what it does is, it opens up the loop sooner the better, like Eagle Pass is a perfect example. We have, 1 lane going in each direction that's being utilized. With future funding coming in the future, we can extend it out to the next section of the roadway where you don't have to build all of it at once.
Yeah, but keep in mind, there's so many easements nowadays, we may need it for water lines, all sorts of things,
And that was the biggest port of, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Roberto, Cuatro Vientos South, when we did that portion, we got 400 feet. The right-of-way acquisitions were on the right, so we have future expansion for that roadway. So,
I mean, and that's something we have to consider, and that, I think the presentation earlier about, all right, do we use it as a corridor for anything else?
yeah, try to get us, we have cable, we have, I'm thinking water lines, huge
Maybe-
water lines.
Maybe TechDOT's doing Hyperloop, following the corridor, who knows? For
That's,
whatever reason.
That's a good point on the Ruth and Georgetown. I think you're referring back to that as far as the right-of-way acquisitions there. That's something that probably needs to be looked at.
But we got 400 feet there, didn't we?
I hope so.
Mr. Luis Perez Garcia, we got 400 feet there, right? Yes. Uh-huh.
There you go.
We insisted on that at the very beginning, yeah.
Is there room for water lines?
1604 for this.
San Antonio one, yeah.
That's one.
telecommunications, who knows, yeah, underlying electrical services.
There needs to be utility corridor,
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Okay,
even if you need 20 more feet, 420, whatever we gotta get.
no, that's, yeah, because it's so much more expensive down the road.
Any other questions, or?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yes, sir, thank you very much. Very helpful. The next item is the, text dot ongoing projects, item E.
There are two slides have to go to those new
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Carlos Rodriguez for the record area engineer for TxDOT. I want to talk to you briefly about the ongoing projects. I know we're a bit on time. The first one, the Kansas City Railroad Bridge, that one, the project itself is pretty darn close to completion. We are looking at 98% complete. We have issues with illumination and signage still going on. The project itself is a $25.5 million investment. The next project I want to talk to you about is the I-59, the US 59, I-35 overpass, the SCR project. It's also a $25.5 million investment. We're on that one, we're 82% complete. We're still on schedule for December 19. We're working on bridge slabs and concrete pavement.
Why was that so much cheaper than like a typical overpass is costing us $24 million, right?
Which project is this?
The flyover 35? Was it because some of it was already, some of the dirt work was constructed
A lot
already?
of the
Yeah.
preliminary work was already built, where we're just kind of tying into what we left off before. We're just doing the middle portions of it, the spans, basically.
Yeah, but it's a longer span.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
But John is right, I mean, the dirt work, you got the base already set. All you're doing is just the bridge work.
Okay.
And that was the key to this one. And it also helps in the speeding up the project on the precast elements. That's helping up a lot.
Plus, the key factor is combining both projects together.
Right. Next one I want to discuss is basically 359 project. It's an overlay project, a spot-based repair. That is from, let's see, 4 miles east of Loop 20, all the way up to the county line on 359. We have done the majority of the spot-based repairs on that project, and we're going to return back and do the overlay. We're working on the pavement structures, there's the metal beam guard fence and the rail foundations. This project also had some work done in conjunction on US 83 South. I don't know if you noticed that there was metal and inlay that has already been completed on 83 South from, Cielito Lindo to Rio Bravo. That's on the southbound only. Now we're working on the structures in that area, and that's what that project itself, once it brings to completion, we're right now like 59% complete on the overall project.
Is there any room, ideas for expanding that, the 359 east?
59?
359.
359. Currently, what the current project we do have a development authority to develop that out to the county line. We are working on widening that roadway out some in the future. Unfortunately, they're not funded, but we do have the development authority where we can get the plans ready for that.
Because currently you're not adding lanes, extra
No,
lanes, it's
just
just
resurface.
resurface.
Just working on the roadway structure.
Right.
Now, Carlos, correct me if I'm wrong, but the current project did put a turn lane up to that Las Colonia out there
Right.
on the current project.
It reestablishes,
So you're gonna have a left turn lane in there,
right.
which we did not. Okay.
That's a dangerous, very dangerous to turn into that area.
Which one? Turn lane?
359,
You use-
into
oh, yeah.
the colonias in that area.
The youth city,
Pueblo No and all that area.
Right.
Next one I want to talk to you about is US City 3. It's US City 3 North.
Yeah,
That
they just
is
started that.
from the checkpoint, which is about 3.4 miles south of 44, all the way up to the county line. That one right now, we just started work on it. We're about 2% complete. And that one is basically going in there and reconstruction. The roadway base or the template that exists right now will stay as it is. The roadway structures, what is being beefed up or worked on. Another thing I want to talk to you about is another overlay project. The other overlay project is a new one that's for 359. And this one has various locations. There's various locations outside of Webb County and Duval County. But the ones in particular that are of interest to us here will be the ones in Webb. The ones in Webb, you probably noticed Anderson, Colombia, working on US 59 from Buena Vista to Ejido. Basically going in there and mill and inlay. Also working on the Unirow, will be the northbound frontage road. That's got some areas that we're gonna go and we're working on doing the spot-based repairs and overlay. Due to the high traffic volume in that area, I'm working with the contractor, and that's gonna be, well, that is basically pure night work, and we're gonna be doing continuous work during the weekend with the shifts. Now, there's gonna be another section to this one. It's on 255 from Camino Colombia, Camino Colombia, from the Colombia Bridge all the way up to 1472. That's gonna be overlaid, but that's gonna be one of the last segments to be worked on for this particular project.
What categories are these, more or less? These,
Categories as far as what?
for all these improvements, more or less, do they vary?
Most of these projects that we're doing are done with our Cat 1 and Cat 4 funding, basically state dollars that we utilize. 3238 is a complete.
Okay, this is something that the MPO really
No,
has
sir.
nothing.
No, sir.
This is
We do
strictly
bring them
your-
to you for agreement when we do put them on the MT, but no, it's strictly a Cat 1, Cat 4 funding.
That's
Nothing
fine.
from the MPO.
Thank you.
There's one more project I want to discuss, and it's just a brand-new project. We had the pre-con, I know it's interest to everybody here, 3338. And that one, we already had the pre-construction meeting. We're scheduled to start construction this coming Monday, a week from today. And as construction starts, we'll brief you on it, okay? Any questions?
Wonderful, thank you. And of course, all these monies are secured and they're all
They're
funded.
lettered out projects, and they produce and pay.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Mr.
Chairman,
President.
and I don't know if there's any benefit, but maybe David and Kirby, the commissioner has a project that the court has approved for which is the bypass. And I don't know if there's any benefit bringing it here since the city does, I think, has annexed the area. And of course, TxDOT is involved. Is there?
Talking about the Wormser realignment?
So where's realignment with the CTIP county funds?
Yeah, I would like to know that too, because I know I hear about it, but I think it's good
So
to.
is there any benefit bringing it here?
It's out of the region of the MPO.
Huh?
It's out of the MPO region right now, correct?
No.
Is it
I don't
with it?
think it's part of it, no?
It would be in the city limits.
Is it? All of it? Okay, yeah, then we could bring it.
Yeah, just, yeah, if anything, just so we
Maybe
can.
if there's shortage of funds or something, no.
I'll check it out.
The city's got some extra money that we need,
But
And Kirby looked like, what's going on, so you want to talk about it, Commissioner?
Yeah, I mean, you're familiar with that project. It's a realignment project that's gonna align Wormser and align itself with Lomas del Sur, and that's gonna be beneficial, obviously, because it'll connect right through Cuatro Vientos Road, which right now there is no connection, everything's barricaded or for safety reasons. But that would definitely help out as far as having the flow of traffic from 83 South, connect through Lomas del Sur, all the way to Wormser. So from south to east would be definitely beneficial unless you would say otherwise.
This is one we've been working on, correct? Kalo is just,
We
One
can't
that
get,
Nathan has on, added to the,
right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's a great project. When Commissioner Galo brought it to us, we certainly looked at it, and you're right, it's gonna be a lot of traffic, not only off of 83, but 359 and whatnot to the back of the neighborhood, and tying into Cuatro Vientos, but it is a viable project. I guess I would like, if y'all bring it, we can do a presentation here.
like I said,
I can work with Mr.
they're telling us
Snyder.
there's might be some city issues since it's been annexed, so I don't know what you have to do to comply.
okay, we really can't go too much into detail. Yeah, let's put it on the agenda and we'll, yeah. Yeah,
No.
okay, thank you. Yes, sir, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think they'll do it. Status report by the RMA, do we have any RMA folks here, or? No? Okay.
I
that's
don't
fine.
know if they've had any meetings, they lost their chairman,
I think that's what's holding up
I
a
think
lot of
they're kinda
projects like Viceos. We're supposed to have an update on Viceos.
lost.
Mayor,
Okay, hopefully next time, we can get them in.
before you close the meeting, I forgot to introduce over next to Mr. Roberto Rodriguez. So next to him on his right is our newest Director of Transportation Planning Development Design here in the Laredo District, Humberto Gonzalez, or we refer to him as Tito. He was a 13-year veteran for TxDOT. He went out to the private sector as a senior project manager, and he was smart enough to come back to work for TxDOT. So he will be leading the charge.
Had some more abuse, huh?
And you would see a lot more of him here at these meetings, so I forgot to introduce him, but.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, sir, thank you. We appreciate that very much. Okay, and do we have any other business?
I just wanna say thank you to TxDOT, I know they've been working very hard with us, and it's been a long time since we've had such cooperation, so I want all, you and all your staff out there, I know they've all been working very hard, and it was usually held down by leadership, and I think, David, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank
of
you
course,
very
we
much.
echo that too. Yeah, just one other thing, the effort grant, any word on that?
Well,
Oh, that's
the last we heard on that was that it could be as soon as I get back to the office and there's a phone call, or it could be a couple of weeks. We're just waiting on, but it looked very, very good. It looked very, very promising.
Okay, we were out there about 3 weeks ago, and of course, we were hitting and knocking on doors as well.
Yes. We can
If you do
discuss it
hear
later.
something, will you advise the mayor and the judge, and he'll pass it on?
Absolutely.
Okay, if there's anything else that we need to do, some more knocking at doors or whatever, just let us know too.
Kicking, screaming?
Okay then. Sounds good. Any other business? And if not, thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Well, I guess we really can't take action. There's just 4 of us. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We'll see you next month, God willing. Thank you.
Thank you.